Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. We have another great show for you today. We have back, after a 12-year hiatus, a guest from way back about 2010, Eric Dover, a medical doctor who's faced scrutiny for medical marijuana recommendations here from the Oregon Medical Board. We'll be talking about that and other freedom-related activities. We have a short but sweet hemp news tonight, talking about medical papers over the past year, and some more surprises. So stay tuned as we bring on our infamous dancing cannabis leaves.
I feel the force.
Okay, our story tonight with Hemp News. A record number of scientific papers were published about cannabis in 2022. Researchers worldwide published a record 4,300 plus scientific papers on the subject of cannabis, according to results of a keyword search of the National Library of Medicine, or PubMed.gov website. This exceeds the total number of papers published during all of last year, when scientists published over 4,200 papers. At the time, that total was the highest number of cannabis-specific papers ever published in a single year. Since 2010, scientists have published over 30,000 peer-reviewed papers specific to cannabis, with the annual number of total papers increasing every year. By comparison, researchers published fewer than 3,000 total papers about marijuana in the years between 1990 and 1999, and fewer than 2,000 total studies during the 1980s annually. Despite claims by some that marijuana has yet to be subject to adequate scientific scrutiny, scientists' interest in studying cannabis has increased exponentially in recent years, as has our understanding of the plant, its active constituents, their mechanisms of action, and their effect on both the user and society. It's time for politicians and others to stop assessing cannabis through the lens of what we don't know, and instead start engaging in evidence-based discussions about marijuana and marijuana reform policies that are indicative of all that we do know. Much of this uptick in scientific interest surrounding cannabis is a result of researchers' newfound focus on marijuana's therapeutic activities. A 2018 paper assessing trends in cannabis-related publications concluded that the total number of peer-reviewed publications dedicated to medical cannabis had increased 900% since the year 2000. In all, PubMed.gov now cites over 42,500 scientific papers on marijuana. Available to the public online since 1996, PubMed is a free resource supporting the search and retrieval of biomedical and life sciences literature. You know, just to assess where we are now, we have 21 states and the District of Columbia have enacted adult use marijuana programs. Medical cannabis program creation are significant improvements to existing access programs are on the table in dozens of states. Alabama, Idaho, and Nebraska are the only states that have not legalized any type of medical marijuana. Okay, talking about medical marijuana, if you or a loved one are looking for a physician who can help you get a medical marijuana permit, well, that's what we do. So give us a call. We have a physician referral service. You can talk to us and find a doctor in any part of the United States, from Maine to Hawaii, from Alaska to Florida. Call us at 503-235-4606. That's 503-235-4606. Now we're going to go to our interview with Dr. Eric Dover. It's a fascinating interview. Next week, by the way, we will have Mila Janssen in the Netherlands, the founder of the pollinator hash making machines. Mila is known as the Hash Queen, so tune back in next week for that. But this week, Here's Eric Dover, and keep working to restore hemp. Good night.
I would like to introduce Eric Dover to our show. Eric is a physician. You aren't licensed now, is that right?
No, I was revoked by the Oregon Medical Board in January of 2011 over the issue of not signing a patient's physician statement that would give them the opportunity to be able to get medical cannabis. The medical board stated that the patient did qualify, that they had chronic gout that was unremittent and was resistant to treatment, which is just total idiocracy. That isn't the reason why they did it. They did it just because they don't like medical cannabis. They don't like cannabis in general. They can't do much about it anymore. I was like one of the last that maybe they could really attack. There's probably 2 or 3, 4 others that they did too. But yeah, I could have reapplied for my license 2 years later.
There are attacks going on right now against medical marijuana doctors here in Oregon. They're being investigated primarily for helping pediatric patients. So they've recently gone after some doctors for helping children with autism on the autism spectrum. And however, right in the middle of their investigation, CNN, Sanjay Gupta put out a hour-long special call about children and autism and how they're helped by cannabis. So since that came out, it's been about a year. They've just kind of frozen their pursuit of these other physicians here, and they haven't heard anything. But I'm sure you know how it works. They can wait as long as they want and come back and ask you, give you 2 weeks to reply. You know, in terms of medical board telling doctors, they'll take 6 months to come up with whatever they're doing, but then they only give the physician and their attorney, if they can afford one. So
they're on the radar. They're on the radar. And once the medical board gets a taste of blood in regards to a particular individual, they won't give up. It may not be this year, it may not be next year, but they'll find something that they could, wrap their greedy little hands around. And as you know, to some degree, probably talking to other physicians, that the medical board makes all the final decisions. You can try to take this to court, but by the time you get out of the hearing, the best you can do is go to an appeals court, which is not talking about the case anymore at all. It's about process. So the appeals board recently, over the past 4 or 5 years, has repealed some Oregon Medical Board decisions. But that just goes back to the medical board, and then they have the blueprint. They've been given the blueprint by the appeals court of what they need to do to make this, to make their decisions stick in the long run. Otherwise, you can go to the federal courts. But the Oregon federal courts, I can't speak for the rest of the nation. I'm just familiar with Oregon. But the Oregon federal courts are in bed with the politicians. They're Democratic appointees overall, and the politicians are Democrats in general. And I'm not picking one side or the other or saying one's better than the other. I think they're both about the same. But suffice to say is that these courts work in conjunction with the politicians and will back up any decision that they make, to the point that I made a video a couple of years ago in regards to a whistleblower from a company called Trillium Health, which is still it's still down Lane County, and I know they've tried to move out to other areas of Oregon also. And they were ordered by a group called Ag Resources by a guy by the name of Terry Copeland. But they were sold to a huge medical coordinated care organization called Centene, which CENTENE, and all you have to do is put their name into the search engine, and you'll pull up all kinds of derogatory articles about the criminality of those people. But yeah, I mean, he put together I put together a video, a documentary with incredible amounts of insider documents that he had. And he's been in court about it because he's been trying to get a hold of his unemployment insurance and some workman's comp insurance that he's due from the company that he was working for, Trillium Resources. And they've done everything they can, to the point where Kitzhaber, who this individual is the reason why Kitzhaber lost his job as governor. He's lucky he's not in jail. But he's responsible for that. He tried to alert everybody else as to what was going on with these coordinated care organizations. But the politicians like Kate Brown and Ella Rosenblum and the people over at the Oregon Health Authority, they don't want anything to do with it. But that video is out there. And if people are interested, all they have to do is go to corruptoregon.weebly.com. Again, that's corruptoregon.weebly.com. There's a short version of the video. There's a long version that's over 2 hours, and it has incredible amounts of documentation. And the reason why I bring it up isn't so much because it pertains to medical cannabis. The reason why I bring it up is it shows the criminality of the government that is in Oregon, whether it be at the very bottom or whether it be at the very top. These people are, I mean, they're a mafia. They're a criminal mafia. And they treat the doctors that try to go outside of their mafia rules, they treat them like garbage. And as we were discussing earlier, there's a gentleman, a doctor that's down in Eugene. He was put on, his license was not revoked. He was given a restriction for opiates for 5 years. And after that restriction was put in place, even that was the only drug that he couldn't prescribe, he couldn't find a job anywhere. Still had a license, that he could get in other states, but no insurance company is going to deal with it, whether it be for patients or whether it be for malpractice or hospital privileges or whatever it might be. Well, the 5 years passed, and here it is 3 years after that 5 years, so a total of 8 years, he's not been allowed to practice. He has no idea who made the complaint. He has no idea what the complaint is about. Jane Orient, who's from the AAPS, American Academy of Physicians and Surgeons, went and visited Kathleen Haley before she retired as the executive director at the Oregon Medical Board. And she told Jane Orient that this doctor committed criminal acts. He's never been charged with anything. He's never gone to court. He's never gone to jail. Again, he has no idea what really went on. He thinks it was a pharmacist that called in, but he can't prove that. That's your government. And the Oregon Medical Board is that's just an example of what the government in Oregon really represents. They don't care about you.
Kitzhaber stacked the medical board with people of his persuasion. And, not just Democrats, but control freaks, And
well, they've got a new control freak over there, and her name is Krishna Swamy. She's another lawyer, just like Kathleen Haley. She was her protege for 10 years. And then when Kathleen Haley stepped down, Krishna Swamy, she took over. And it's being run the same way. In fact, there was a group of lawyers, and supposedly there were some people from medical associations around the state. I heard that they didn't show up to the final meeting because it was put on hold for so many, like over half a year, almost a year. But these lawyers, some of them from Medford, one of which I've spoken to personally, they went to the medical board and told them that there's no way that they can determine how to represent a licensee, a physician licensee, because the medical board is not consistent with how they approach these cases. And what they were told by Warren Foote, who is also now retired as the AAG that oversaw 5 different healthcare boards, but he's gone now. They've got some new person. I'm not even sure what her name is. I'm not even sure she's the person that is going to ultimately be their AAG. But these individuals like Warren Foote and Krishna Swamy that met with these lawyers told them to get the hell out. That they don't want to hear their complaints, that they're above the law, they can make any decision they want to, and they are basically immune from those decisions that they make. And so far, that's been true. Because I went to federal court. After I was on your show, a couple of years later, I went to federal court. Anna Brown, the Article 3 judge there at the Portland Federal Court, at the Mark Hatfield building, she was friends with Kathleen Haley and her husband, Stephen Wax, who now works for the Innocence Project. He was a federal defender, and I had a lot of respect for the man, what I read in the paper about some of the cases that he was involved with. But I ended up writing him and about his wife, never heard anything back. I've lost total respect for the man because his wife has destroyed so many individuals, like this individual that's down in Eugene. And he's just one example. He's got two boys that are 13. This all started when they're 5. They're both dealing with PTSD, with anxiety. Their father lives in a rusty RV, doesn't have a car. He works a minimum wage job. He's obviously much brighter than, being not say that these people working minimum wage jobs aren't bright, but he obviously has proven himself to be brighter than being able to work at just a minimum wage job. And,
that's tragic.
So Kathleen Haley and Warren Foote and the rest of these medical board idiots destroyed his life and are destroying his boys' lives. And they may think, oh, well, they're not. Well, they are. When you leave somebody with anxiety and PTSD, you've destroyed their lives at some level.
So as we were talking before the show, I told you I have dealt in terms of running THCF medical clinics all together across 9 different states with dozens of different physicians. I've dealt with medical board complaints from Michigan and Colorado to Washington and Oregon and Hawaii, over 50 of them. I can't say an exact number, but we've seen many different times that actually, if we could nip it in the bud before it became something referred to the board, then we had great success. But once it got beyond that very first step, then it's like a pit bull, they clamp down and they're not going to let go until you basically give in to whatever they say, or they get rid of you altogether. When did you first become a physician? How did you decide to enter medicine?
Well, I decided as a teenager. It seemed something that was interesting to me, and it also seemed that it was something that was a little bit more difficult to attain than the average situation out there. So it was something that was going to challenge me. And then I went into a program at Riverside that was set up to basically funnel into UCLA. It was called the Biomedical Sciences Program. And basically what Riverside was trying to do was just get their own medical school, which they've actually done at this point. They have a medical school at Riverside, California now. But back when I did it,
we had an office. Our THCF medical clinic had an office in Riverside for about 8 years.
Oh, great. Yeah. Not a place I'd want to live, but
no, it was actually the fellow who started this television show back in 1996. He moved to Palm Springs, and he was a nurse, and he opened our office there in Riverside because he figured that was the best place for business and from where he lived in Palm Springs. It wasn't too far away. Anyway, we did pretty well there for a number of years. But I just have to mention that.
Sure.
But back to you were.
We started off with a class.
Did you go to UCLA medical school?
Yeah, we started off with a class of over 200 people, and then after 3 years, basically finishing 4 years and 3 years, along with some medical school courses that third year, like biochemistry and genetics, etc. After 3 years, they chose 20 people. Most of it had already dropped out by then. I think there was like about 26 people left, and they chose 22 people. So that's how I got into UCLA. I funneled right into UCLA, although the first 2 years of book work were still done at UC Riverside, and then we were moved out to Harbor UCLA General Hospital, a county hospital, because ties have been broken between San Bernardino County Hospital and UCLA. I don't know the politics of that, but something happened. So then my third and fourth year, I was a UCLA medical student, did all my clinical stuff, and tried to do as much as I possibly could at Harbor UCLA County Hospital. That's a class place, considering the disparity in class that goes there versus a private hospital. I will say that what I saw in the years that I worked, learned, practiced there, I saw a higher quality of care there than I've seen anywhere subsequently. The people were amazing.
When was that?
That was from 85 to 88. So I did 3 years. First year was transitional. Then I did 2 years of family practice. Transitional just being, like what a lot of anesthesiologists do the first year, radiologists, just general hospital work and different specialties like OBGYN and medicine, surgery, et cetera. But the last 2 years I did family practice.
Did you go into a specialty?
Family practice. That's what I did the last 2 years. I just funneled into their second and third year program there at Harbor. But that was some wonderful years for me. It was hard work. I probably lost a year's worth of sleep. But as far as the people that I dealt with at the hospital, whether they be attending, staff, or other interns, residents, it was probably the most amazing 3 years of my life. And I thrived there. I mean, I made an incredible name for myself there. I was allowed, because of my strong work, I was allowed to, or I was requested and asked my second and third year, when the pediatricians would go away for a weekend on their sabbatical and do whatever they do there, I took care of the pediatric wards. It wasn't because I was necessarily the brightest doctor or the best doctor, but I was extremely conscientious, and I didn't let anything slide. I followed up on everything. And the thing that really got me, there was a little baby that came in that was about 2 weeks old, that came in with a fever, and we couldn't find a source for it. We bagged it a couple of times for urine. I put a dipstick in there and it came back positive for white cells, but I couldn't see any white cells. But I bagged the kid a third time and it came back just flush with white cells because it had a kidney abscess. So that little situation right there really catapulted me into a position of trust and knowledge, at least enough knowledge to know, hey, this guy's not going to get himself into trouble. He's going to go and talk to somebody else before he does that. So again, those were wonderful years for me. It's the most respected I've ever felt in my life by any group of people. I was needed. It was all hands on deck. We weren't abused. As I said, the attendings were incredibly nice people. They were real positive examples of what doctors should be.
So this was your residency?
Internship and then 2 years of residency.
Both of them. Okay. How is it what happened after that? How did you end up coming here to Oregon?
Well, I got a job in private practice with another physician in San Luis Obispo. That individual's wife she was known to be kind of kooky, as I found out from other doctors in the area, but I ended up doing some urgent care there in the area. And then I decided, well, it's very expensive to live here in California. It's time to move on. So I saw greener pastures in Oregon, and so I came up here. And I should have realized when I first went to the first medical board introduction for new people that were new coming into the state, that there was concerns. Just the way the whole thing was held in it was a large group of people. It was held in one of the movie theaters, the AMC theaters downtown Portland. And it just struck me as so odd, the entire situation, that if I'd been smart, I would have left immediately. But then I probably would have never had my son either. So, he's the most important thing in my life. He's a special, spectacular person that I love and care about immensely. So it was worth doing that just for him alone.
How old is he?
He's 23.
Okay.
I didn't have until I was about almost 40. So, but he's been a godsend to me. I mean, you're supposed to get someone that's more problematic than you were. I don't know. God must have been asleep, or maybe I wasn't as bad as I thought. But I ended up with a real gem of a human being, is what I ended up with.
Good. Congratulations. Well,
But then I ended up here in Oregon, and things were going okay at first. But I'd see the newsletter that came out from the Oregon Medical Board. I'd read through it I think it was every month or 3 months that it came out, and I'd see these different doctors on there, and I'd just think, what the heck is going on here? I never experienced this in California. It was never like this. It's like they were hunting for doctors in Oregon, and I would never recommend that anyone ever come to Oregon to practice. In fact, many doctors are saying that now, and many doctors have not come to Oregon just based upon that alone from other doctors' feedback. But I ended up here, and things are going pretty well. I was at the Salem Clinic, and then I came up and worked for Adventist, and then I went out into my own practice. It was something much different. It was for people that were uninsured or didn't have good insurance. So it was very inexpensive for them to come in. It was originally $50 for a visit, then it was $60. I could get blood work for them that was like a chemistry panel, complete blood count, urine test, cholesterol panel for $20. I had a special situation set up for me with Quest Diagnostics. And then Epic Radiology would basically give my patients radiological procedures for 50% or more off. So it was a great situation for people to come in. It was a little difficult, though, because of the fact that you get some crazies coming in, basically drug, seekers. But other than that, it was pretty good. And everything was going fine until someone made a complaint at the Voter Power Clinic down in Medford. And who really
How
made
did
the...
you, how did you come to help with medical marijuana? How did that come about?
Well, my girlfriend knew an individual that knew, I forget his name, but he's probably about, I don't know, 50 some odd years old now. Nice guy, great talker. He was down in the Medford area. I'm sure you know who he is. I just can't recall his name. He's got a brother that's in the area too. Anyways, I just was introduced to him, and he wanted to talk to me and see if I'd come in and help out. And I was going down there about once a month. And I thought I was doing a great job. I thought when I told the individual that they didn't qualify, that they'd have to go back to their doctor and get more information. I mean, I'd gotten x-rays on him that he didn't bring any information. And I got x-rays, and all the x-rays were normal except for some very minimal arthritic changes. So he obviously didn't have chronic gout. Chronic gout looks ugly. I mean, this guy said he had had all kinds of visits with a doctor, yet at the end of the day, all I ended up with was 7 pages for 6 different visits. And only 2 of them had to do with his foot and gout. Most of the other ones were about allergies and stuff. So I thought that this was going to be a slam dunk for me, but it wasn't. And there was a doctor he's a DO, and he's still down there in Southern Oregon in Grants Pass, from what I can see. His name is Dr. Daryl George. And you don't have to cut that out. What's that?
I've heard of him. I don't know him.
He is a despicable, and I'll say that. Let him come after me. I'd love to have him sue me, because I have so much information on that gentleman, and he is such a despicable human being. I've got information showed he was using cocaine in his office for people that worked with him. I've got information showed he was using cocaine at parties. I've got someone that testified he was at a party for the clinic in a hot tub where he pulled down his trunks and started masturbating in front of people. This information was presented to the medical board, and they blew it off because it pertained to my case. And they didn't want to screw that up. They wanted to get rid of another doctor that saw benefit in cannabis for patients.
So how was George involved with that? Was he used against you?
He initially had written the medical board a complaint letter saying all kinds of weird
complaint.
What's that?
So he was a complaint. He was
he was a complainer, but he wasn't the ultimate complainant. He just complained about the Voter Power Clinic, said that people were, they were wearing cannabis shirts and smoking marijuana wherever they wanted to, which is an utter lie. They had a special room with special ventilation where patients that had cards could go and, medicate. I mean, these people would drive for 5 or 6 hours to get to this clinic, or longer. And they'd stay overnight, and they had to medicate. I mean, they had to medicate. But anyways, there was a bunch of lies that this individual passed out. And then this one person came to the clinic, and I don't know if this was a setup, because if I'd given him one, I might have gotten in trouble for giving him one when he didn't deserve, or I didn't give him anything. All I was going to do was sign this physician's statement, just said that it might help him, that cannabis might be of help. It's the state that makes that decision, not me. Right. But anyways, I thought that they would appreciate the fact that, I just wasn't passing it out willy-nilly, that I was being persistent and, being aware of everything that was going on with the patient so I could make the correct decision. And he was given back his money. He was told that if he got the information, he could come back and get signed up. But he went to Dr. Daryl George, who did his exam. And if people want to go online, they can go to my website, EADoverMD.weebly.com. And it's got Dr. George's workup. He didn't even examine the joints. I mean, is that what gout's all about? It's about joints, right? It affects joints. You get deposition of uric acid crystals. The body doesn't like them there, and it comes in, tries to clean them up, and it causes inflammation because the white cells can't swallow those crystals. And it happens more frequently in the feet, especially the big toe, mostly because of gravity and decreased temperature there too. It's a cooler area. But if you look at his workup, And I've got it. I mean, I've got everything analyzed on the website. But if you look at his workup, he didn't do anything. In fact, I presented this to the medical board, and again, they just blow it off. Once they've got their 5 pounds of, or their pound of flesh, they're done. They don't want anything else to do with you. And I butted heads with them. I mean, I really butted heads. I mean, I held the flashlight to their faces so people could see it, and they didn't appreciate that. And so me ever getting a license back from them it's not possible. I've irritated them too much.
What did they say?
I never even asked them for one. They just said they just tell everybody with their revocation letter that in 2 years you can reapply. But I'd see what had happened with other people, and I didn't see the necessity of having to do it, so I didn't do it. What I decided was I could go on a rampage against them, and I'm still on a rampage against them. In fact, as William will attest to, we're dealing with the Oregon Department of Education, and that involves the Oregon Health Authority, and it will involve the new governor, Tina Kotek, because I've sent 7 tranches of information what's going on with COVID, masking, and the shots to the school board, or to the school board and to the Oregon Department of Education and to the Department of Justice, and it's going nowhere except for the fact that they haven't made a final decision, and it's been months since this occurred with this poor woman. Her name is Tina Trussell. She doesn't care if I say that. She's more than happy to have that out there. It's not going to affect her situation one way or the other. But that's a lot of the problems that you're seeing are coming from the Oregon Health Authority. They're a big part of this puzzle involving medical cannabis.
Yeah.
And again, if people want to go and see about the Oregon Health Authority and what they're up to and the criminal behavior they're involved with, like taking money from private companies, selling public information like prisoners' healthcare information, selling foster kids' information, selling your information. Many private companies' information is being sold to insurance companies, to doctors, and a lot of this is coming from the Oregon Health Authority. They're selling it, at least as far as I know, to one coordinated care organization, and that's Trillium Health. And they turn around and make money off of that. And it's really bad because what they're doing is they're doing redlining with that information. So these doctors can take these poor patients that are on the Oregon Health Plan, and they can say, oh, I don't want to see that patient because, look, they use opiates, or they've got this problem, they're too complicated. I won't make enough money off that patient because everything's through capitated payments. That person is worth a certain amount of money, and the doctor has to take care of them that amount of money, and the doctor can find healthier people in that group. They'll cherry pick them. So I don't know if that gets back to the original question you had or not, but yeah, the problem starts
interesting because we went through our own nightmare. People, long-term viewers of this show will know. I know you and our producer Bill, who you mentioned a moment ago, he's the guy who's been producing this show for the past 23 or 24 of the 26 years it's been on cable TV and now the internet. Anyway, we went through a takeover, and they targeted, of course, our medical records because we had records on a couple 100,000 patients from Michigan to Hawaii and many places in between. And so monetize those. And those are, most people don't realize that their medical records are sold and traded over an open market. Now, they claim they strip out identity from those sales, but the truth of the matter is they don't. And the company that stole our business, they still brag that they've got our 250,000 records that they can monetize again and again.
Well, I can tell you how bad it is. As I said, the Oregon Health Authority is selling information. There's private entities like, I don't know which one you're talking about, but Trillium Health, they were involved in buying the information and then rehypothecating it and selling it to different entities, businesses, as I said, physicians, insurance companies, credit companies, because your credit is based upon your health.
Yeah.
So yes, they are selling it, and it's so bad. I mean, you want to see what it's, as I said, if the people watching this show want to see how bad it is, how about this? They sold HIV records, and they had the patient's name on there, and they had the patient's address. HIV, and that's just one thing. As I said, mental health records. They sold records the Oregon Health Authority sold records from foreign students that were going to Oregon colleges like Oregon State or Oregon, or the University of Oregon, on, like one poor young woman that she was from the Middle East. She'd had an abortion or two while she was here. They sold that information to somebody, we don't even know who. And that's just one country. There's Chinese that have been, Chinese citizens, Russian citizens, you name it. The Oregon Health Authority is watching them and selling that information internationally to make money. It's so bad, from what the whistleblower told me, and from what he's presented me so far, is nothing but truth, so I have to believe it. But once a month, the Oregon Health Authority would send somebody over with a bag, pick up $5,000 from Trillium Health and bring it back. All money that was unaccounted for. Nobody knew about it. So, yeah, there's some real problems. And if people don't think their information isn't being sold, it is. And as I said, if they want to see the website and they want to see that information, now, the information's been blocked out. I can't have people's names and birth dates and addresses on there. But I've got all that information. I mean, I know the courts are looking for it. They wanted the whistleblower to give it all. The whistleblower doesn't have it anymore, but other people do. They got it way before the courts made any decisions as to him being able to have it or not. So, again, the information's out there. As you've seen, as I'm sure, I know Bill has seen, because I see him once or twice a week online at meetings. And, the state of Oregon is a criminal syndicate. There's nothing but criminals running it. I don't know who really won the governorship this year. Not that I'm a big fan of Drazen's, but I can't say that that there isn't some, something going on like what has been occurring in Arizona, election fraud. I just believe that there probably is. And the state doesn't seem to want to do anything about it. And I'll be honest with you, at least 70% of the people that live in the I-5 corridor from Eugene to Portland don't care either. And that's why different counties are having votes in Oregon right now. They've had, at the last 3 elections, they've had, 12 different counties that have had a vote as to whether or not they would like to secede from the I-5 corridor, Oregon, and they're voting yes. I mean, they're pretty phenomenal, like 70%, 67% are voting to leave the state of Oregon. Yeah.
I've been
so we've got a lot of problems. Now, I'm not saying everything is bad. I love what Oregon did with cannabis. In fact, of all the states, I think that they've probably got, it's not a perfect model, but it's probably the best model that I've seen so far with the other states. Like in California, as you're probably reading about, they're having problems with the dispensaries can't make any money because the state has put so many taxes at so many different levels between the dispensary, the buyer, the seller, the grower, et cetera, that the people that are growing it illegally have taken over the market because they can sell a cheaper product.
Yeah. Here in Oregon, it's only taxed at the end. In Washington and California, they're staggered taxes on the grower, the processor, the dispensary. So in the end, the patient is the patients that need it for medicine are the ones that are stuck with paying outrageous bills. I mean, in terms of adult use cannabis, it's not much more. I mean, not much less in a lot of these places. In some cases, more than it has been on the black market. So,
yeah, and we have people like yourself and other folks that were in Oregon that made sure that this was done as correctly as possible. And I don't applaud the politicians for this. I applaud folks like yourself.
Thanks. So let's go back to medical marijuana a little bit. So you were helping with voter power, and as I think I've mentioned to you, I haven't said it here on the show. People would ask me, "Where's Dr. Dover? Where's Dr. Dover?" For the longest time, I didn't know exactly what to tell them. I knew that you weren't practicing anymore, but I didn't know exactly.
Go
ahead.
Yeah, I did get a tribal license, so I could practice basically what comes down to naturopathic medicine. But it's very difficult because even the naturopaths can prescribe allopathic drugs, the legend drugs. So for people to come and see me, it was kind of difficult. It was all out of pocket. The insurance will cover if they go to a naturopath, et cetera. And since then, I've just been kind of just hanging out. I fortunately was in a situation where I had enough money that I've been able to survive and pay for myself and college for my kid, things like that. But now I'm old enough where I've actually started taking Social Security. But I stayed in the state until last year. I just left this past year. And I prefer not to divulge exactly where I'm at, but let's put it this way. It's in the South. In a state where they don't have weirdos running around. I mean, they have weirdos running around. Every state does. But we don't have the weirdos running around like they are in Oregon. We don't mask up here. I mean, if you go into a hospital, you'll have to mask up. But anywhere else, you don't wear a mask. People can mask if they want to, but they don't have to. You don't have to get a shot. There's no forcing of this COVID shot on folks. And I will say that when politicians or judges do something wrong here, they're in trouble. In fact, there's one down to the very southern end of the state, Judge Hidalgo, that is in big trouble right now because of what she did with money from the COVID fund. They don't know what happened with it. I didn't even know that judges even made these kind of decisions. Maybe it's just the state I'm in. But judges don't usually get involved with passing out, funds from the federal government. But here, I guess they do. So, yeah, I'm out of the state. What am I doing now? I don't know. I just kind of living life. I don't mean to bring everybody down, but I don't see where we have a lot of time left. I think that we're in times that are going to become quite dire economically, physically, many different levels. So my heart is with God. He's protected me so far. And I've read the Bible since I was a kid. I'm very familiar with the book of Revelations. And I think we're in the midst of it right now.
Talk to my wife. She loves reading. She focuses a lot on her studies on that.
But I do help out people. I help out people as much as I can. Patients with cancer. People still contact me about different issues that they have medically, asking me, what they should do or what they shouldn't do. So I've kept in touch with, a portion of my patients, and they still keep in touch with me to some degree. But no, I didn't die. I didn't give up. I'm still beating the drum against the state of Oregon, the politics, against the medical board. I've got another letter that's going out to the medical board. It's a notice from the Oregon Statewide Jural Assembly that'll be going out here soon. I've got letters, as I said, that I've been writing to the Oregon Department of Education, Department of Justice, that are going to be going to the governor and to the Oregon Health Authority. And I'm sure they've already gotten back some of those letters because I don't speak very kindly of the Oregon Health Authority. I call them a criminal, and I don't use that term lightly. I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true, and I didn't have evidence to back it up.
Well, I've definitely been subjected to criminal treatment by the courts here in Oregon, but I love the environment. That's one thing I like, and even though it's been pretty cold and wet right now, in the summer, it's really nice.
I missed the mushroom hunting, and I came back to do some mushroom hunting this year, but the weather was so, it went from very hot to all of a sudden very cold. So yeah. There was very few mushrooms, if any, that were growing. But that's the one thing I do miss. Otherwise, when I have gone back to Portland, I feel it's very dark at many different levels, governmentally, socially, with all the homelessness and trash. It's a filthy environment. And it's one reason why my son, who was born and raised there, will never go back there again. He just doesn't appreciate the darkness. Satanism has become a huge movement at least in the city of Portland. I've got pictures of people with their T-shirts on and signs saying Satan loves all his little children that have been at some of these Antifa protests, etc. It's a dark place to me, and I feel so glad that I've left. There are positive things, as you say. If the state would divide up and the East and the South would leave, I'd move back, and I'd move to one of those areas. But I will never go back to the I-5 corridor between Eugene and Portland.
How did you first come to start helping medical marijuana patients? You said you met this doctor, activist down in Medford, Ashland area. Then
No, I met him actually up here in Portland, and I can't recall his name. It's been so long, but he was involved with John Sajo.
John Sajo.
John Sajo. So that's how I got involved, was through him and John.
To help John Sajo too.
What's that?
I moved to Oregon in 1984 to help John Sajo with the Oregon Marijuana Initiative. And we've had him on the show once. I've been trying to get him back on again to talk some more, but really insightful guy. I moved here. Had been Washington State Normal Director for a couple of years, and I came here because they had an initiative to try to legalize marijuana, and I've been doing it ever since.
So I just met this individual. Again, he's a younger guy. I can't recall his name, but he was with John Sajo, Voter Power, and Jerry Culp, I think is your last name, Culp?
Oh, yeah, Jerry Culp, yes.
Yeah. And so I just met with these folks, and they talked to me about it, and, it sounded like it'd be something interesting. And I will say, Paul, I met incredible people as far as patients in the medical cannabis program. I heard amazing stories. I saw people getting off opiates, or at least markedly decreasing their usage and going to just cannabis. I saw miracles, is what I saw.
Yeah, we see that all the time. I still help patients and work with doctors to not nearly as many as I once did, but there's still a group of folks who want to keep their medical marijuana licenses. In some cases, get it for the first time for many different reasons, because they're minors, because they require it given their situation one way or another, so they can save money when they're buying cannabis at the stores, so they can grow their own and get it cheaply. That's one of the things that motivates me, is I can grow my own and still have enough to give to the one other patient I grow for and my family and friends. And so
it doesn't take much. I've got a friend that lives in San Jose, and when they legalized growing at home, he started growing, and he just grows 6 plants a year. He doesn't even know what to do with all of it. He just gives it away for free.
Yeah.
He can't utilize it all. There's so much.
Since 1999, I've grown and given away over 7,000 pounds of free medical marijuana to thousands of sick and dying patients, and thousands of cuttings back in the cuttings lately. But
congratulations to you.
From 2002 till 2016, we were giving away cuttings to patients so they get their garden going. But
the good Lord's got to bless you for that, because you're doing God's work, is what you're doing. He didn't put that plant on this planet for no reason.
One of the things I do is I have speaking engagements around the country, and I talk about how cannabis is tied into people's spiritual practices in many different ways. In fact, including in Judeo-Christianity, in terms of being the anointing oil of Israel and of Christianity. Jesus Christ. Christ means anointed, and anointed means you're anointed with this oil that is a majority of cannabis oil.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I know that they spoke of oil, but they never put hemp or cannabis in front of it. So I just figured I never knew what kind of oil it was. Well, that's interesting. Thanks for the insight.
Oil. There's a church on the island of Sicily near Palermo called the Monreale Cathedral. And Monreale was built in 1150 AD, and it has 1,200 gold leaf paintings that were done about Christianity and Jesus and Adam and Eve and many other things going back there, in 1150 AD, more than almost 900 years ago now. But anyway, they covered them over in glass as well. So they, you can't touch them because they're sealed under glass. But out of those 1,200 pictures, like 90 of them depict the marijuana leaf, like when Adam, and you got to remember, in 1150 AD, most people did not read or write, you know, and so they primarily got information at the church from these pictures and what they were told. So there's in one, you know, in one of the stories, there's Eve at the apple tree, and there's a snake there. Then the next picture frame, there's Adam getting the apple from Eve. And then in the next picture frame, they're covering up their genitals, you know, and a marijuana leaf has appeared right next to the tree with the apple tree. And God shows up, and God's not too happy. But then God sits down and teaches them for a while, and the marijuana leaf is above them. So somehow marijuana was tied to knowledge. If you go back to ancient Egypt, the goddess Sheshet was a female goddess. She was the goddess in Egypt of education, writing, learning, and she was always depicted with a marijuana leaf above her head. And so I talk about that, how it's tied into spiritual practice. Especially, I went to school in China for a couple of years, and I imported hemp paper and fabric from there for about a decade. So I talk about China, Japan, other cultures, and how cannabis is tied into their religious practices. And even the oldest historian in Western thought, Herodotus, the Greeks, back in 3500 BC, he wrote about how the Scythians used cannabis spiritually and used the fibers to domesticate horses.
Wow,
so
that's great information. So did they cover themselves up with a fig leaf, or did they cover themselves up with a hemp leaf?
It was a fig leaf that they covered, but the hemp leaf appeared above them. And so then when they were sitting down with God after that, the hemp leaf was there with Adam and Eve. So somehow it was tied in, you know, knowledge. And so
that's over. It's 1,000 years ago, and or over 1,000 years ago, and here they are. They had hemp. I mean, they were using hemp.
Right. And so,
or was it cannabis, or was it hemp?
It was both. It was both.
Okay.
You know, so they knew the difference between cannabis and hemp, and they grew both kinds. In fact, archaeological records show that cannabis had been cultivated in the Mediterranean basin going back 13,000 years ago. And since it originated in Central Asia, 4,000 or 5,000 miles away, it had been carried there by 13,000 years ago, long before the Romans, long before the Etruscans, which were 1,000 years before, way back in prehistoric times. Cannabis.
Before the Mesopotamians even.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's etching of the first lawgiver of Babylon next to a marijuana plant, and that's right there with the Sumerians, you know.
Wow. Well, it's a medicinal and spiritual plant. So,
indeed. So, if somebody wants to reach you, do you want to give some way that people could contact you if they
Sure.
Want to reach out and contact you, maybe to help with any of your other projects or anything?
Sure. They can reach me 3 different ways. They can reach me by email, which is EADover, DOVER, MD, Mary David, at gmail.com. So EADoverMD at gmail.com. Or they can go to my 2 websites, the OMB, DR Dover, VSOMB.weebly.org. They can find it there, or the other website that has the video on it. It's corruptoregon.weebly.org. And contact information is on there for me too.
I'm sure we'll put those links up here. So, well, it's great to have you back on the show. I mean, it's been a long, long time. I think when you were on before, you were right in the midst of your initial confrontation with the medical board. Is that correct?
Yeah. In fact, it was after I'd gone on a show with Jim. What's his last?
Jim Lockhart.
Yes. I'd been on Jim Lockhart's show, and then I went on yours afterwards. So it was probably about a year before they revoked my license.
What year was that?
I had the hearing in September of 2010. They had their quarterly board meeting in January, and that's when they made the decision. So it's, again, if anyone wants to read it, they can read the final decision. I mean, all that information is put up on the website. So anyone that's curious about it and see what they did or didn't do, along with additional information, like Dr. George's records, another doctor, what's his name? He was down in Klamath Falls. He was supposedly an expert witness who ended up getting in trouble because he killed at least 2 patients with his medical care, saying they had rheumatological problems. Well, they didn't have any rheumatological problems. In fact, the rheumatologist said they don't have any, but he continued treatment with some pretty serious drugs like methotrexate, prednisone, opiates, benzodiazepines.
So this is on your website?
Yeah, it's all on the website. And I'm trying to think of his name off the top of my head. I wish I could remember because I'd like it to be on TV, but I just can't think of it off the top of my head. So
I'm sure that we have the show you were on, if it was back in 2010 or so. I think we have all of our shows online on YouTube going back to about 2007 or so. So maybe we'll figure out what that number is and put it in here.
Well, his name, there's a whole section on him on my website, and what he was up to and what he got in trouble for. And it's interesting how quickly his situation was resolved, and he was given back a full license after killing at least 1, if not almost 2 patients. And we don't know about others. Those are just 2 that we know of. And you can also see the medical board. Again, I only trust them as far as I can kick them. But you can see some of the other abhorrent treatment that he gave to patients. It wasn't just 1. I mean, he sent a woman home. This doctor sent a woman home from the office that had a blood pressure of 90 over palpable. I mean, that's, for an adult, that's, you can't live. The pulse was up around 130, 140, and he sent this person home. They ended up in the emergency room a few hours later. That's how horrific this doctor is. And he was considered an expert witness by the medical board. And when you go to the hearing and you try to show them, exhibit to them what this individual is and how they write something in a book about gout and then 180 degrees, say something else under oath. But
yeah,
again,
that's outrageous that they would pull your license over not giving out a license. It's like they obviously were not giving a license to a gout for gout. So, but we're almost out.
I would have been happy to give it to him for gout. And the doctor's name was Dr. Calvert, Calvert.
That's the.
But yeah, and I would have been more than happy to give it to him if signed his form. I don't give it to people; I just sign the form. But I would have been more than happy to if he'd had documentation to substantiate what he was telling me, but he didn't.
So you're trying to do the right thing and be punished for it. It was obviously your association, I think, with Voter Power, and Voter Power trying to implement dispensaries and those kinds of things. But we're out of time now, so we got to go. We'll have you back.
Good.
But I really appreciate we've had Eric Dover, a physician who has helped thousands probably of medical patients here in Oregon back in the day. I'm sorry that you went through it, but thanks for coming on and talking about it again.
Thank you, Paul. Take care.
Right.
Thank you, William.
We're going to restore hemp. Good night.
Yes. Good night.